Stephanie LaFlora, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Stephanie, for our listeners who may not be familiar with you and your work, who are you and what do you do?
I think the foundation of who I am is I'm an encourager. That's really like my life's work. And the way that I do that right now is by encouraging folks with curly hair to embrace their curls and empowering the professionals in the hair industry to have the education they need to do that. I also help creative entrepreneurs. I do that by helping them with marketing and branding and just helping them enjoy the journey. I think being an entrepreneur is it can be a really lonely, isolating, and stressful journey. And I think that I bring a lot of energy and excitement and honestly psychology to just enjoying this journey, even if you have a family, even if you have a lot of complexity in your life.
Stephanie, what I'd like to do, I would like to get into how you started your journey. You basically quit your safe corporate job while you were pregnant during a pandemic to go after your dream, which I think is so cool. I'd like to talk about that if you could. I'd like to talk about the psychology of a business owner, but not just a business owner, a female business owner, and not just a female business owner, a minority female business owner in this environment, in this economy, the unique specific challenges someone like you may face, the psychology of an entrepreneur, and then also to building community, founders like yourself. So important to build community. Maybe we'll take them one at a time. But before we get into all of that, I want to start all the way back from the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Chicago and I rep Chicago hard. I love my city. I think that that has a lot to do with my perspective and just being in a melting pot and understanding what diversity can look like in a way that really functions well and is harmonious. So, yeah, Chicago's my roots. I'm in Denver now. I got here by way of being recruited by a tech company in Boulder. And it was kind of like history was made after that.
Say someone asked the 18-year-old version of Stephanie LaFlora what she wanted to be when she grew up. What do you think the 18-year-old version of you would have said?
Oh, I was certain. I actually knew exactly what I wanted to do at 13. Like I was really early. I was one of those nerds that really felt like I knew what I wanted to do. Being a screenwriter. So I actually went to film school.
Where'd you go?
I went to Loyola Marymount in Los
Oh, in
Angeles.
LA.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great school.
Yep. So um being a storyteller has always been my foundation. It's something that I did really young. I did young authors competitions in like the fifth grade and stuff like that. So I was really a writer first. And that's always been my foundation. So the 18-year-old me would be absolutely floored and shocked at what I do. Because in my mind, I wanted to be like a super wild, ethereal artist person.
Mhm.
So being an entrepreneur, it to me, I thought was very opposite. What I've learned though in my career is that storytelling is such a powerful skill set that it can be translated into just about anything. And that was really what I learned in my early jobs that I had. I had the opportunity, I was fortunate to be mentored by CEOs really early in my career. And I think they saw in me the things that I'm using now, but I didn't know that
Mhm.
that was in me. And they really helped me understand how my skill set could be translated into entrepreneurship pretty seamlessly.
Yeah.
And that really opened my eyes and started me on this path.
Couple things there. One, I'll get to storytelling in a second, but Loyola Marymount, is there a prettier campus in the country?
Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh. Oh
gosh.
my gosh. It's so beautiful.
It's
I like
crazy.
aesthetics, you know?
Oh,
I
that
love that.
chapel on the cliff, like
Yeah,
that.
so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
really
yeah.
know. Yeah, yeah.
Like you think like were you an Entourage fan, the TV show Entourage
Yep.
back in
I
the
was.
day?
Uh-huh.
When I walked on that campus, I thought Vince Chase and Turtle were going to walk out. Like it's like you oversee LA, you see the Hollywood sign to the right,
It's the
Ocean to the
best.
left. It's crazy.
It's just like where you could really dream, you
Yeah, it's
know?
so crazy
Yeah, I
that
was there
campus.
like, yeah, I loved Loyola. That was a great experience for me, for sure.
And then get back to screenwriting. You said the power of storytelling. Storytelling is so human. Anything you
So
do
human.
from like waitress to CEO to whatever, like the power of a story is so impactful, isn't it?
It's really incredible. And I really didn't understand how powerful it was. As a young person, I was really thinking more literal when it came to telling stories. I have this really interesting story that I think really explains how my mind was opened in
Mhm.
this. I was recruited by a tech company, a data tech company, pretty young, and I really was there to tell interactive stories. So take my storytelling background, and then this was like at the beginning of apps,
Mhm.
and we were trying to figure out how to create interactive curriculum with apps. And so even though I didn't have the technical background, my ability to translate and storytelling on any medium was really the thing that got me into the door with
Mhm.
tech. But it was a startup. So you start doing all these kind of things. Like early in a company, you're doing all kinds of activities. And the CEO is very seasoned, has a ton of success behind him. I wrote the pitch for us to get a grant. And it made sense for me to do that, right? Because I'm a storyteller.
Mhm.
So I'm writing the pitch for how we can qualify to get this grant and all these things. And I go to the pitch meeting. It makes sense for me to be there, but I was the youngest person in the room by a lot. I was the only woman in the room, and there was one other person of color, but that was it. So I'm in this room, I'm pitching to a billionaire
Wow.
directly to him because the relationships that my CEO had, it was unique. So I was able to get into some interesting rooms. So I'm pitching to this foundation, this billionaire directly on why we should get this grant for $5 million in order to execute this program. And again, my intent was just to create the pitch. My thought was that my CEO was going to actually deliver the pitch. So we get in the room, and it's like 3 or 4 people in the room, very small room, very VIP, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I'm just there to like push buttons and like maybe get a coffee if needed, because I'm really young at this point. But I wrote the pitch. So the CEO, without saying anything to me prior, looks at me and goes, "You know this, right? You got this." And I'm like, "What?" And it's like, "Yeah, go ahead, kick us off, Stephanie." I had no idea I was going to deliver this pitch. I had never delivered a pitch in my entire life. And I delivered the pitch and got $5 million.
Did
So
you? Let's go.
that was like one of those things where it was like, oh, okay. Like I'm like, wheels are turning. My skill set is being reimagined
Yeah.
at a whole nother level
Yeah.
than I had originally thought it could be imagined. And I have to credit the people who I was around with seeing that in me and also putting me in those scenarios where I could just like, you know, it's a it's a definitely a fire hose experience.
Two things there. One, sometimes people see things in you that you don't see in yourself just yet. You know what I mean? Maybe you or I wouldn't have the confidence at that age to say, well, I'm going to pitch the billionaire. I'll get the $5
Mhm.
million. Like, oh, I'm going to get the coffee, push the buttons, just be in the background. Someone needs me. But you said your CEO or the person who had the connections, they saw something in you. They knew you had that in you and they brought it out. And the storytelling, like you thought maybe you'd be telling stories on a screen, go to Loyola Marymount. You think you're going to go to film. You're going to be the next Steven Spielberg or George Lucas or whatever. And then now you're telling stories and you're changing minds, but it's in conference rooms or it's like one on
Mhm.
one. You know what I mean? It's a story, but it's in a different venue, right? Like it's just amazing how you
Right.
could take something and bring it to something else and it could have power in places you never thought it would have power. And you utilize it in places you never thought you could utilize it, right?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't have even imagined that at 18.
Yeah.
I would have never imagined it. So I'm always open. I'm
Yeah.
always willing to try something, and I'm rarely afraid.
Yeah.
And that has really helped me.
Even if you're self-confident, maybe some people are born maybe a little bit more self-confident than others, but like maybe some people are a little more outgoing than others, just
Mhm.
naturally, maybe you're naturally confident. But what's that do for your confidence? Say your confidence at a 4 naturally, and that CEO gives you that opportunity and you
Yeah.
crush it. Where's your confidence after that?
Oh, I
Right?
mean, like it was
Through the
a really
roof.
big deal. It was a really big deal. In fact,
That's awesome.
the company that we pitched to even came back around again because I was just so much younger than everybody. It was obvious. I think that was probably an earlier time in my career doing something like that. So they came back around to the executives at my company and said, "Hey, I just want you to know that we closed this deal because of her." And they
Wow.
told them that. So it was really a transformative moment for me because that was when I thought, oh, a lot more is possible than I've ever imagined. And I already have a lot of the skills. So that really opened up my imagination to think, okay, what else can I do?
Yeah, I mean, like just to recap, you said there's that moment gave you that thought where there's a lot more possible than you can ever imagine. That is so cool. So then you get there. Let's fast forward. Let's get to the point where one of the points when I was looking at your bio that really struck me. What's it like for a person to quit their job to start their own business during a pandemic while they're pregnant? Whoa, that's a lot. Could you walk us
Oh,
through that moment? Like what brought you there, and then what went through your mind with all that going on?
I mean, in short, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
But I think that I think a lot of people probably have this in common with me. I will call myself a very reluctant CEO. I was terrified of creating a business and taking on the risk that incurs, especially because I had a very well paying tech job as a Black woman in America. That's already rare enough. Do
Mhm.
I really need to do more? Do I really need to push myself into more of
Mhm.
a rare category? Like, is that what I really want? And
Mhm.
so, even though I knew what I wanted to create, and I felt really convinced of the opportunity of the market, I just kept not launching. And it was because of that fear.
Mhm.
And so I really worked on that. And I always tell people that I was at this crossroad. There was this moment where I was just like, I wish I could do it. I wish I could figure out how to feel confident enough to do it.
Mhm.
And I was just like kind of searching for answers in that season. And I remember that when I went past that, I thought, I'm going to make a mental note of what got me past that barrier.
Mhm.
Because at the time, it felt so elusive. It felt so like I couldn't even grasp it. And really, what it was is that I examined every alternative that I could come up with. And when I did that, I realized that the thing I really wanted was to go and take this leap. And
Mhm.
I really was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just go into this other industry. Maybe I'll just do this other job. Maybe I'll just work at this different company. And I did explore all of that. I applied, I did all the things that you do. And as the opportunities came in, nothing gave me life. Like,
Yeah.
and they were great opportunities, but none of them moved me in any way.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on? What's happening to me right now? What's internally going on? And then I just like remembered the original dream. And I was like, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
So then it's a question, will I do the thing that I want to do or will I not? And then when it came down to that, it was clear to me that the next step was to go for it. So when it was during a pandemic, I'm pregnant, all these things, none of that timing was mine. I had been working on getting to a strong MVP so that then I can go and raise funds and launch a business. Well, it just so happens that the conditions that were going on during the pandemic were ideal. So we got to 2,000 subscribers in a very short amount of time with ads that were converting very cheaply. So it was like the timing of us launching was really more based on the demand growing. And then I quit my job, and 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
Whoa.
So I always say I'm not the keeper of time. That's what keeps me sane is to tell myself that. I
Mhm.
can plan, I can have ideas, I could do all these things, but at the end of the day, the timing of things is going to happen outside of my control a lot of
Sure.
times. I can
Yeah.
try to guide it, I can
Mhm.
try to anticipate it, but the
Mhm.
exact moment I cannot
Sure.
I cannot decide. And so when all of that happened at the same time, I can tell you, I would never have chosen to do all that at the same time in my life. Never.
Yeah.
But I had already made this internal commitment and gone through this whole process of like, is this for me? Is this not for me? Am I willing to do this? Am I willing to take this bet? And I had planned, I had saved, I did everything that you do
Yeah.
in order to get to that point. And then it just all popped off. Like literally the pandemic happened, then the demand happened, then I was pregnant. It was beyond me,
Yeah.
you know? And at that point, I remember when I found out that I was pregnant, this is after I hadn't left yet, but I had already given my notice. I was freaking out. Like it's like I never planned to do all these things at the same time. And not only that, but I was starting an accelerator the next month.
Wow.
Right. So I did demo day 7 months pregnant. I raised funds pregnant, visibly pregnant.
Wow.
And you know who writes these checks?
Yeah.
Mostly not women.
Yeah.
So I had to like process, like, how am I going to do all of this? And I just came to this conclusion that I'm not the keeper of time.
Yeah.
I know I'm grown. You know what I mean? Like I know I thought through this.
Yeah.
I know I did the internal work. If this is how this is all aligning, then so be it. And so
Wow.
at that point, I just decided that must be the way that my story was meant to go. And it was hard. It was really hard, but I did it.
Wow, that is so cool. Are you familiar with like Stoic philosophy at all, or Stoicism? Are you familiar
No.
with that? So there's this a branch of philosophy made popular by a writer, Ryan Holiday, and you're just like so stoic you don't even know it. It's like it's basically you control a small amount, a microscopic part of the universe. Like it might be like this much, and that's what you can control. The rest is either out of your control or you can maybe barely influence, like you said. You can nudge it, you can guide it. Maybe you can like delay it a day or two, but you can't stop it, or you can speed it up a little bit, but it's going to happen. And you just go with the wave. You go with the wave and adapt to the rest. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what you did. And like you said, the timing was crazy. And you just rode that wave right into the shore. That is so cool. What was it like when you went to quit your job? So I take it you're pretty successful. They probably really liked you at work. When you walked in into your boss and just said, "Hey, I'm giving my notice," what kind of comments did you hear?
Well, I was really nervous about it, but I have to give credit because this is the same CEO who put me in that scenario
Yeah.
many years prior
Mhm.
with the pitch. So I think he had always been nudging me to entrepreneurship, to be honest.
Oh,
He was aware that I was building. So it was a unique relationship. He also was one of the first investors in my company.
that is
Um,
cool.
so it was really, really unique. I have to say that. I was very fortunate in that way. And so the conversation was really about like, all right, what do you need? How are you going to be successful? Tell me what you need. Let's talk through the strategy. Like he had always been a bit of a mentor for me. And it was a unique conversation than what would normally happen. But I think that throughout all of it, there's something, and I want to speak to this because I think there's a lot of talk about women, but I think there's something so incredibly powerful about being pregnant. It's a very unique, obviously, experience, but not only that, this is my second child, so I already had a kid. I know how sensitive, like, your hormones, your cortisol levels, your stress levels are for a baby. So I always say, and I'm very happy that this happened the way that it did, although it was very hard, because I knew I had to remain calm. So it forced me into this. I started my entrepreneurial career and was forced to remain calm throughout it and protect my mental health in a way that I probably wouldn't have done.
Mhm.
Because I would have been like, oh, it's go time. I'm about to hustle. Because I'm obviously I'm a go getter. But like that would have been the space I would have been operating in because I would think, okay, I'm elevating myself to the next level. This is the moment where I really got to give my all. But because I was pregnant, I had to think about it differently. I had to think about like, okay, well, what's the most efficient thing I can do right now? And how can I create space where if I need to rest, I can rest, you know? And so it forced me to create a different relationship with work at the same time as me becoming an entrepreneur. And that was really helpful, I think, for me.
One of the, I think the initial challenges I see, no matter what business people build, is the community. They want to build the community where it's like a bunch of like-minded people that when they do X, they do X this way. You know what I mean? Like it's either jujitsu, or if you have a smoothie stand, or you're doing hair, whatever it is, you have like a community and people like Seth Godin. Are you familiar with Seth Godin?
Mhm.
And so Seth's been a guest on the show. And one of his sayings that when this stuff comes up is people like us do things like this. And that is community. What kind of challenge was it, or how important, I guess, how important is building a community, and what kind of challenges did you find doing that?
I think that one of the things about community, building a strong community in a lot of ways is kind of the antithesis of what you feel pressure to do as a startup founder. And the reason why is because if you get venture funding and stuff like that, immediately the goals you have to hit are so aggressive that building community a lot of times is a slower play. It's a lot more, the ROI is longer term. Now, eventually, that hockey stick really kicks up when people trust you, you build community and all that. But like it takes a while because
Mhm.
trust is not overnight.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I feel like startups don't feel like they should start with building a community because they got to hurry up and get traction. And traction and community don't always feel like the same approach.
Mhm.
I feel like I've learned through trial and error that community is so critical. And it's critical for lots of reasons. One, you don't really understand your branding or your marketing if you don't really understand your community. You don't know how you're supposed to be talking to them, what to show them. How can you be relatable to them if you're not in communication with them often? And then the second thing is why you want to build community and not just have some group people you ask questions. That's nice. But if you have a real community, they'll tell you when they don't like something.
Mhm.
And it's hard to get that. Feedback, real
Yeah.
feedback is one of the
Yeah.
hardest things to get as a business
Yeah.
owner, especially early on. So if you build that community, then you have people that will tell you, I don't like that. And you want them to tell you it with passion, because then that lets you understand like what they really need and what they really want and what their expectations were. And so that those are so freaking valuable
Yeah.
to have that it becomes worth it to invest in building a community early on. And they can help you figure out what your next feature will be. If you're doing a tech product or if you're doing a service business, what's the next thing you need to add? So all of that work that startups do and trying to get product feedback, you can essentially create this great space
Mhm.
where you can keep coming back to those people. And that's what influencers do really well. And that's what celebrities do really well. That
Mhm.
a lot of times startups don't really think about because it's really focused on product and distribution. And
Mhm.
product and distribution is great, but it's not relationship.
The two things you mentioned there, follow up on, you said be relatable and feedback. If people can't relate to you or your product, you're dead, right? Because if you're not
Yeah.
relatable, people aren't engaged. If this podcast is not relatable to X isn't going to listen to it at all. Then once you're relatable and then they start like connecting with you and you can get feedback from your real fans, just say 99% of the world's going to ignore you, but for that 1% that like you said, people like us do things like this, like those, we'll call it your community, right? Like the community we're trying to build. You can get feedback of, hey, we need more of this, less of this. We need the product to go faster, slower, thicker, thinner, whatever it is. And you can get their feedback and build it into the next iteration and the next iteration. Oh my gosh, how you're more relatable and you have
Mhm.
more connection. And then you get more feedback. And then you wonder why some brands just take off and they have such a
Right.
loyal following because you're relatable and with the feedback, right? It's a two.
Yeah. And like it's hard, it's so hard in the beginning. And one thing another thing I've learned is like no feedback is feedback.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you don't get any feedback. And that's like, well, what do I do?
Hard.
No feedback is feedback. No feedback means that you're not even there yet. They
Yeah.
don't care.
You haven't heard it. They don't
You're
care.
not you're not relatable. That's
Right.
really what feedback is. And at that point, you probably just need to listen more. You need to just ask questions. How can I solve your problem? And so community is just such a big like aha. Not to mention the fact that social media like ads and things, everything's so noisy. There's so
Mhm.
much that's out there that
Yeah.
it's becoming harder and harder to actually reach the people who care about what you are doing.
Oh, so true. How
So if you
about
don't
this?
own the community, then you can't have those conversations.
Yeah, that's so true. So how about this? So all right, so you say you start your own company, right? You take your big chance, pandemic, pregnant, leave your job, you do it. You're starting to be relatable. You get some feedback. So then how does like an early stage startup CEO, entrepreneur with, like you said, it's so much noise out there. and there's so much vying for people's attention. How can that person get in front of investors and convince them to write checks? The ability to do that, it's got to be a game changer. What are some best practices, or how hard was that to start off?
Oh, it's crazy. It's like it's a ridiculous it's a ridiculous and endeavor statistically, right? Like
Yeah.
I feel like all entrepreneurs are like masochists because like why else? I mean, you got to be able to endure some pain in order to go through this. So
Yeah.
raising funds is crazy hard, but there's options, and understanding your options is really important. A book that I recommend is Venture Deals. You read Venture Deals, you understand how VC works. It's almost as good as the people in the room that are writing the checks, probably as good.
Who's
If
the
you really,
author? Do you know the author of that one? Oh, Venture
oh,
Deals.
I should know. I will find out.
I'll find it.
Uh,
We'll put that in the show notes. Okay, yeah, I'll put
yeah.
absolutely.
But Venture Deals is where you want to start. That like really tremendous. It's a meaty book. It's hard to
Okay.
get through, but it's got everything in it. Another thing is really understanding your options. Like VCs are one option. That's the one that people think of as like the North Star plan.
Mhm.
And that works for some people, but it doesn't work for a lot of other people. I am the type of person who I want to set the bar as high as possible. I want to go after it, and then I want to learn from that experience where I
Yeah.
really want to be.
Yeah.
And that's how I've been. But I had the opportunity to raise with venture. We also did a crowd fund, equity crowd fund,
Mhm.
and we got angels. So I've had experience with like most of the type of funding that people require with institutional capital. And it's very, very difficult, but it all actually starts with there's a couple of key elements. One, what problem are you trying to solve? Who are you trying to solve it for? Why is that vital? And how big is the market opportunity? That's like the core. You start with that, and that needs to be extremely compelling. And then the part that a lot of founders struggle with, and I've actually worked with founders on their pitch, is the story part. And that was where again, it all comes full circle for me. We were fortunate, although I hate this statistic, is true. In 2022, we were fortunate enough to be one of around 100 Black female-owned businesses to receive venture capital. Like that's it.
Only 100
So
businesses. Only 100 receive. Really?
Black female, yeah,
Black female. Wow.
receive Black women receive less than 1% of the venture funding that goes out annually.
Wow.
So the stats are nuts. So with something like that, like how do you approach that? One, you do your research. You need to know how it works.
Yeah.
Even if it intimidates you, keep doing it till it's not. I have a friend right now. She's just recently won a pitch competition. She's launching her company this year. She's about to go raise a round. And this week, she is meeting with as many people who will listen to her pitch all day long to just pitch nonstop
Mhm.
to improve her pitch. Like you got to be a little maniacal with it. Like it really becomes, it's a full-time focus if you're pitching venture. Angels are a little different because they are really high wealth individuals. And so they may be more passionate about your why and your mission. They're not
Mhm.
always as like just purely numbers driven like VCs are. But raising money is really hard. It's really hard. It's so hard that actually I think there's a lot of other things you can do. It's so much work that if you have a skill set, like a very profitable skill, you may be able to fund your business by spinning up a business on the side and
Mhm.
doing that. Or, there's a lot of options. I just think that we romanticize funding with venture, and there's a lot of alternatives and they should be explored.
How much, say, you have a vision for your business and you want to go take it this way, and how much of that freedom do you lose when the venture people come in?
It depends on how much equity, how much money you're getting from them, and whether or not they want a board seat. So
Mhm.
those are the main things that dictate that.
Okay.
Typically, once you start getting into significant amounts of money, like 1 million, maybe even 500,000 plus, you're going to have someone on your board. At that point, the oversight is a lot more significant,
Mhm.
and they can't make the decisions, but they definitely can apply pressure around the
Mhm.
decisions you make. You're also typically dependent on a funder for the next round.
Mhm.
Not completely, like obviously you're going to go after other funders, but you always want to get with a funder who would likely participate in the next round of funding that you need. So having a good relationship with them is vital because they're the first check that's going to be written when you need to
Yeah.
raise money again in a year. So they have a lot of influence over that. Now, obviously, if you get into significant portions of your business being sold through equity to a funder, then everything changes at that point because you're just an employee, really. Because at that point, once you lose a certain percentage of ownership, you aren't really the owner.
That's such a fine line between like taking the money and losing control or not having enough money, but owning everything, like being totally in control, you know? There's a great line, I forget, it was from Mad Men. If you don't take their money, they can't tell you what to do. You know,
Right.
but sometimes you need the money. It's such a double-edged sword. My gosh. How about this in today's environment, post-COVID, from your perspective, what are some of the unique challenges a Black female-owned CEO business, or what do you think you're facing that maybe the average person doesn't know you're not going through, but like what kind of obstacles do you think are in front of you that maybe aren't in front of other CEO entrepreneurs?
Statistically, like I said, less than 1% of Black women receive venture funding. So I shouldn't even say it that way. Less than 1% of the venture funding that is distributed annually
Mhm.
goes to Black women.
Wow.
Simultaneously, though, there's another stat. Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America. So think about that.
Yeah.
The most businesses being created, the least funding being distributed. I don't,
Wow.
like that there's a huge gap there.
Disconnect
So
there.
right. So, and that gap isn't happening because people aren't qualified, right?
Mhm.
Like, so I think there's two things. There's one, just the stats itself, like that's a unique challenge to try to overcome. Another thing is a lot of times, depending on what your business is,
Mhm.
they don't get it. If your business solves a problem that is unique to your community, or maybe not even unique to your community, but is perceived that way. So Crownhunt is a perfect example. Crownhunt is making life easier for people with curly hair.
Mhm.
I spend when I'm in pitch meetings, 100% of the pitch meetings are across the table from a white man.
Mhm.
What do they know about curly hair?
Mhm.
Most of the time, absolutely nothing. Most of the time, they assume that that means Black people. It doesn't. 65% of the population in this country has curly hair. That's 200 million people. But then they're like, but how is this not niche? I get that. Like from people. And
Mhm.
it's like, I literally just told you the stat. It's not niche. So I think overcoming the it just doesn't, I just don't know. It's just not clicking for me. The
Mhm.
truth is that a lot of investors, regardless of how smart they are, regardless of how many spreadsheets that they have,
Mhm.
make investments based on gut. And your gut, if your world is very homogenous, will almost never lead you to something that feels totally different. It's psychological. Like it's a lot of things. There's a lot of things in it. There's racism. There's a lot of things in it. But
Sure.
at like just the high level perspective,
Yep.
taking a little bit of the emotion out of it for just a
Yeah.
second,
Yeah.
you're up against the psychological challenge because you have a group of people who they do what they do based on their gut, and their gut never includes you. So
Yeah.
how the hell do you communicate to them something that moves them? And the math should be the way that you do it, but you could talk to Black founders all day or minority founders all day, and they can show every spreadsheet that needs to be shown to demonstrate the opportunity in the market. And it still is like, I don't know. I think there's another layer. The other layer of the psychology is within you. And
Mhm.
this is where I like to speak to and work on because this is the part I can control.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is like how much programming has been put in you to believe that when you walk in a room, nobody's going to hear you, nobody's going to see you. How
Mhm.
much psychology has been put into you to downplay, to ask for less, to lower the bar, to really just kind of change your goals based off of the stats that you understand.
Mhm.
So I'll just kind of rephrase that.
Mhm.
I think that it's very challenging psychologically as a Black founder to show up with the same amount of confidence and enthusiasm as someone else who will be seen as a typical investment.
Mhm.
And you're seen as more of a novelty investment.
Mhm.
Even though you might have same industry, you might have
Yeah.
same opportunity, you might meet all the qualifications. And a lot of times you have to think outside the box. A lot of times you have to, I mean, yeah, your confidence has to be crazy. You also need community around you. You need to know people who have done it, who
Mhm.
look like you, who can talk to you, can speak to you, can encourage you. Because if you
Mhm.
don't have that, it's really easy to feel like, well, this is impossible.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That is all. I think that's an MBA right there. That's that's 3 credits to your next MBA right there. Oh my gosh. That is fantastic. And then where do you think that confidence comes from? You having that confidence, not just to start the business, not just to move forward with it, but like actually go into the room and like you said, not ask for less. Like you said, some people are programmed to ask for less, or maybe I shouldn't even be here. And I want to ask for 10. I'm only going to ask for 5 because I'm programmed that way. Where's that confidence come from when you want 10, you're asking for 10? Like you go in there with the confidence where that person might not look like you, might not understand your story, might not totally empathize, or maybe not even be aware of the opportunity that's out there because of the world they come from. Where's that confidence coming to walk, sit there, look across the table, and ask for exactly what you need?
Well, twofold. One, I've been in tech for 10 years. I've seen people with no college degrees that dropped out, wear shorts and flip-flops and a backpack and a raggedy t-shirt every day and make tons of money,
Mhm.
command rooms.
Yeah,
It's happening already.
yeah,
They don't look like me, but they don't look like what the standard used to be either. So
mhm.
if they can have that confidence, why can't I? That's
Sure.
one. Second is, and I'm passionate about this, but the second is my ancestors are the strongest people, some of the strongest people to ever exist in history.
Mhm.
To be able to survive 400 years of enslavement
Yeah,
and become presidents
yeah,
and Supreme Court judges and like all these things, where does that come from?
yeah.
How could that be? It comes from the imagination. It comes from will. It comes from trying anyhow when there are no odds that make any sense. And so I have a lot of that in me. My grandmother marched with Martin Luther King. She did not go to college and she became a millionaire. Like I've been raised by people who thought, why not me? Even when no one was doing it. And
Yeah.
so I have a lot of that fire in me to I never think that I should be the one that didn't do it. I always feel like, why not me? That's how I always feel, no matter what the stats are, because I know that human power and ambition and willpower is like divine. It's
Mhm.
not just, it's not something that it multiplies, you know?
Yeah.
And I really, truly, deeply believe that, not just for myself, but for anybody else, even people who don't look like me. And that's why I always say, encouraging people, that's my life's work, because I really believe that. I believe in the human spirit.
That is so powerful. That is so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. As the interviews unfold, I kind of write notes to myself of what would this like, where's the title of this going to be a couple weeks when I post it. I started off like 20 minutes ago, the power of storytelling. I'm at right now, why not me? That's a great title for that. That's so
I love that.
powerful.
I love
So,
that.
and you mentioned about like your ancestors, and you said you go 400 years ago. You said they're slaves, and all of a sudden the Supreme Court justices are presidents of the United States. You got that in you. It reminds you a little bit. I follow this Navy SEAL called Jocko Willink, and one of the things he says when he loses people in combat, really good people, they lose over fighting overseas. They say live to honor them. Like,
Mm.
where's like like why do you work so hard? Why do you do what you do continually? 20 years in, he's like, I live to honor them. I live to who came before me. So that sounds a
Mhm.
lot like what you're saying right there. You're living to
Yeah.
honor them. That's
Yeah, I
so
agree
cool.
with that, because like their imaginations made it possible for me to exist. What could my imagination do for somebody later?
Yeah. Oh, it's so,
So
so, so,
everything
so,
that's unimaginable becomes, and
so
it
cool.
becomes from an individual believing
Yeah.
in unimaginable, you know?
Yeah.
So
What,
I just like, that's
yeah.
what I feel like we're here to do.
What would you would think was insane 30 years ago is commonplace today, and what you think's insane today will be commonplace 30 years from now. You know what I mean? Like it's just like
Yeah.
people keep pushing, just reimagining stuff and putting things forward into the world that they didn't think were possible, and you just keep building off of that. That's great. Want to switch over. First off, thank you for that story. That's just phenomenal. What you've done, your story is just awesome. Stephanie, want to transfer over to a part of the interview we call Share Your Secrets. So our listeners can get to know you more as a person. Entrepreneurs like yourself are usually really big routine people, either how they start their day or end their day, right? So, like, what's your routine? Like, how do you either start your day or end your day? What is your routine?
So I think actually more of like an artist in how I live my life than like what is a stereotypical type A business person. So for anybody who's listening who fits that demo, for me, it's about how my day feels
Hmm.
more than it is about a strict routine of like this happens, then that happens, and then that happens. I have to start my day calm. I
Hmm.
don't care what's going on.
Yeah.
If I have to move really fast, if I have a really big thing that's coming up, I have to be calm. So that means quiet time. And I got kids, so this is not easy to do.
No, I
But
understand.
I have to I have to be calm. And that's just my own demeanor. Like I'm not gonna feel rushed. If I need to wake up earlier to just like have a calm day, then that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
I also take walks pretty much every day, even
Yeah.
in the wintertime when it's cold, because I just need walks. Walks are really helpful for me to like
Yeah.
process my day. They're really helpful. They're just great mental health. Working out, which is a more recent thing, I'll admit, but it really is transformative.
Yeah.
And then how I end my day is probably more of a routine. I just like really have to take care of myself. I spend all day just like giving.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the end of the day, I need time to myself. I need to take a slow
Yeah.
bath. I need to do my skincare. I need to like
Hmm.
just read a book. I need
Yep.
to relax. I need to listen to music. How I end my day really helps me with how the next day feels. So
Yeah.
that's another routine thing. But the main thing is like I will be calm no matter what. No, even
Yeah.
the craziest, most stressful day, you
Yep.
will not catch me upset and yelling. Like the more intense things get, the more calm I get because that's
Yeah.
the only thing I can think. It's like, oh, this got really tense. Let me calm down. So I'll take a walk when most people would be like on the phone. I'll meditate for 10 minutes instead of, doing something else because for me, everything comes from the calm place.
Love it. Be the calmest person in the room. All right. That's you. That's so cool. I mean, you go for a walk. How long's your walk?
Like 30 minutes, sometimes an hour.
Awesome.
But I'm in Colorado, so it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
Like
awesome.
I have
I
like
can't.
trails around my house.
So great. Now, and granted, there's a little bit of a physical benefit to that, but that's so mental, isn't it? It just
It's so
clears your
mental.
head. It's just so It's 99% mental, isn't it? It's just so
Mhm.
great. That is now that is fantastic. How about this? You mentioned you read a book. Can you think of a book that influenced your life or changed your mind more than any other? Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, well, I'm reading Big Magic right now.
Oh,
Um,
Elizabeth Gilbert.
yeah,
Yeah, how
and
great's that
I am,
book? That book's crazy
yeah,
good.
yeah, I am like trying to expand. I've been creative my whole life, and I've never really thought, I haven't really like invited people into how I think about creativity because it feels like just like my DNA is creative. But
Yeah.
I am excited to like bring in more ideas and concepts and philosophies into
Okay.
that because I'm requiring so much more of myself right now than I ever have that I want to expand my view of
Yeah.
even what's possible with creativity. So Big
Yeah.
Magic is something I'm reading right now that really I think I'm excited to see like where it takes
Yeah.
me.
Do you get to
Yeah.
the part yet? How far are you through the book? Like
I just started it. So
okay. There's a
yeah.
part where she's going to do a project and she decides not to do it. And she has a conversation with someone. And it's crazy. I don't ruin it for you. But when you get to that part where she stops the project and someone picks it up for her, it's a book's crazy. It's a great book. Awesome too. Before we hang up, I got a couple creativity books for you. I think you'll love. I'll send them to you.
Okay.
How about this? How about this? When you need to clear your mind and recharge your body, what do you do?
walks, like I said, like that
Yeah.
was huge for me. Just sitting in a quiet room.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of noise in my life.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
How old are your kids?
5 and 1.5.
Oh, you're in the grind. So
I'm
you
in
got
the
the crazy,
grind. I'm
you
in
got
the
the craziness. Okay.
grind. Okay. Like I'm
You
still
got
not
it.
sleeping through the night. Like
You
I'm
got,
in that world.
I got
Um,
this.
but that place you like really need. I
Boss,
just like quiet. Sometimes
uh,
I'll just sit in my car
yeah.
and just sit
Oh,
there
it's the
for like
best
30
place
minutes.
sometimes. It's like a safe house. Sometimes your car is a
Just
safe house.
breathe. Seriously. So like for me, just like quiet, like actual silence. There's no stimulus. Sometimes I'll go and I'll like close the blinds in the room and just sit in a dark room. That
Yeah.
sounds like weird, but
No, it sounds perfect.
low
No,
stimulus
it sounds good.
is what really helps me.
How about this? How about this? What advice would you give to maybe a young entrepreneur, kind of like you, 10 years, maybe 10 years behind you, considering the same sort of leap or same sort of thing that you got into? What advice could you share with them to help them along the way?
I'm not a pessimist, but I think that my advice is often sounds pessimistic because I think when people think about taking a leap, the thing you think about is what if I fail?
Mhm,
And that's the thing that's like, will I do this? Can I do this? What if I fail?
mhm,
If something's been gnawing at you long enough where you're thinking about it when you're tossing around in your sleep. You're thinking about it when you're like at work in a meeting and you're just like, I cannot do this anymore. I have to do this other thing. If
mhm.
something's gnawing at you like that, even if you fail at the business, you will succeed at listening to your intuition. And that will teach you something that is so powerful, it will tell you what to do next. There's gold on the other side, no matter what,
Wow.
is what I
Well,
would say.
there's gold. So just do it. And no matter what happens, there's going to be gold on the other side of that leap, no matter which way it goes.
It's the direction that you're supposed to go. And so
Wow.
whatever's on the other side of that is what's for you.
That's
And
so
it
good.
will take you to the next spot. Because we like to premeditate failure.
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Like,
Anxiety. Just but failing in
right?
advance. Fail in advance. The worst possible thing. Let's think about it like it all. Let's act and make it feel like it already happened. Crazy.
Right.
Human beings are we're our own worst enemy. It's crazy. Kind of a similar
Yeah.
question, but let's just say like big picture. Stephanie, we talked about a lot. We talked about storytelling, Loyola Marymount University. You were in tech, getting 5 million feedback, being relatable, building community. If you could have everyone listening take just one lesson away from everything we discussed, what would that lesson be?
Bet on yourself. The example that will enrich your life no matter what. Bet on yourself.
Wow,
Even
that's
if
great.
you fail, you can fail miserably.
Mhm. Bet on yourself. That's so great.
It will still enrich your life. Period.
So
It will
great.
never fail you to follow your intuition. It just won't.
Bet
Because
on your,
failure is inevitable, right? So you can fail doing the safe thing and you can fail doing the thing you really want
sure.
or that you feel drawn to, you know. The thing you're drawn to is going to teach you something. If you're in the safe zone and you fail, there's nothing really there other than maybe I should take the leap now.
Mhm.
Your soul knows what's up.
Yeah, that's great. How about two fun questions to wrap everything
Okay.
up? Stephanie, if you could spend the day with anyone, alive or dead, famous, not famous, who would you spend the day with?
I mean, I'm gonna be real with y'all. It's
Hit me.
Beyonce. It's
Beyonce.
Beyonce.
Let's go.
Like,
Let's go. That's perfect.
I'm not giving you like
Now,
it's Beyonce is the queen.
yeah,
She understands. So she's brilliant. She's
yep,
an empathetic, brilliant human.
yep.
And I just want to know. I just want to know it all. Like Beyonce. It's definitely Beyonce for me.
So
I'm gonna
good.
keep it all the way real.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. What would you do with it? How would you spend the day with it? What would you want to do with Beyonce?
I would want to make a song.
Yeah.
Because I
Cool.
want to I want to experience her creative process doing something she's brilliant at.
Yep.
I want to do that. And I do some music production. So I would make a song with Beyonce.
Yeah. I love Irreplaceable. Like I never turn that song off when that comes on, like to the left, to the left. Like I listen to it from start to finish every time that song comes on. Like I love that song. That's so good. She's so good. Last question. Stephanie LaFlora, if you had to get a quote or a saying tattooed on your body, what would that quote or motto say?
Oh, this one's good. I have one.
Dude, let's go.
You can't really see it, but it says, I think I can.
I
Like
think
the little engine that could.
let's go. You're the first guest in 100. Some already had it, but you're the first one that showed me. It's awesome. I think I can.
I think I
Awesome.
can.
I think
Yep.
I can. When did you get that? How long ago?
I got this in like 2015, probably.
Okay.
I am not a person who enjoys fitness, although recently I have, but it's always been like a more high bar for me. I did a race. It was a 5K, which
Okay.
for a lot of y'all is very small, but for me, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But then also it was just like this mental thing of getting over whatever it is that feels impossible. You can. All you gotta do is just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. And it's as simple, it can be as soft and as like simple and innocent as the children's book.
Mhm.
Like it
Yep.
doesn't have to be this, I am the best in the universe. It don't have to be like that.
Mhm.
It could actually just be, I think I can.
Mhm.
And if you show up every day, you did it.
Yeah. So good. I think I can. I think that is about as good as a spot as any to wrap this up. Stephanie LaFlora, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your story, your journey. I mean, just keep kicking ass. Oh my gosh, so great to meet you.
Thank
And
you.
Stephanie, if people are looking for you, Crown Hunt, what you do online, where can we find you?
If you're a stylist or if you have curly hair and you're looking to get all your curly hair needs met, you can go to crownhunt.io. If you are looking for encouragement as a fellow entrepreneur, you can find me on Instagram at Stephanie LaFlora on Instagram. And we actually have a Discord community called Founders Fam, where we're bringing together founders. We're doing brainstorms, we're working on their hardest problems, and really developing all these things we're talking about, trying to get founders to enjoy the journey and work together to solve problems.
That is great. What I'm going to do, Stephanie, I'm going to put all of your website, your Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm going to put it all in the show notes. So if people are looking for Stephanie and want to connect with either Crown Hunt for product or you want to connect with Stephanie as an entrepreneur, just look in the show notes. It'll all be there. But Stephanie, thank you for joining us. I keep going. Appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. I like you. You got like, has anybody ever told you remind them of Gary Vee?
Oh, really? That's an honor. Thank you. Oh my gosh.
You're like your cadence, your energy, like you feel very much, you even kind of look similar. I feel like
Really?
y'all
Yeah, thank you. I
got some
appreciate you.
vibe.
That's an honor. Thank you so much. Your story is awesome, Stephanie. You're an amazing interviewee, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Can't wait to post this one.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You were a lot of fun. That was good.